Everybody. So if the world financial wizards have got it so wrong that we have, in spite of being told that everything was normal, the economy was sound, that we have 14 banks here, there and everywhere around the world failing and having to be bailed out. The governments of the world started bailing them out, in other words, giving them money to save them. We have all this nonsense going on. We know what we already knew, that you don't believe politicians, but you've got another thing to believe. You don't believe bankers and financiers and such people. So what can be done about it? That's the problem. And the problem is that if the governments are going to waste taxpayers' money saving banks from their own stupidity, that's the wrong way to go. So governments then came up with another wheeze. They said, well, let's try and get the consumers buying more, and this will get the economy going again. And so they're going to give pensioners a Christmas present of $1,000 or so. They're going to reduce this, cut that, start public works. But they're caught with their own lies. How can you start public works to build more libraries, schools, roads, when all the time this last 5 years have been saying we're short of labour? First of all, they told us we're short of skilled labour. Now they're telling us we're short of unskilled labour. Suddenly, they've got millions to spend doing more work. So the politicians have argued themselves into a corner because, don't forget, how come if we're short of skilled and unskilled labour, how has society managed to keep going? So let's get back to the financiers. A book was published many years ago called sorry for the swear words, I don't believe I'm old-fashioned, Bankers and Bastards, written by a man called McLean, spelled McLean, senator, Democrat senator. His book made a two-day wonder, forgotten it quickly. He exposed the fact that the banks in those days, which was 10 or 20 years ago, were pretending to farmers and others that they could borrow money overseas at cheaper interest in Australia and save the money. But then the bankers of the world meddled with the exchange rates between the Australian dollar and overseas currency, and in the end the poor old farmers who'd gone on this ride found they owed more money than ever than if they borrowed Australian money. And guess what? They hadn't borrowed. The banks had put the entries through and pretended they'd borrowed overseas, but they'd actually done no overseas borrowing. And this McLean exposed it all in Parliament and published the book. Now there is an even more startling book was published by a fellow who was working for the World Bank. This book was only out in the last 5 years or so. And I think he called himself, I think the book was The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. He said that his job in the World Bank was to go around convincing the poor little third world countries and anyone else who'd listen to them that you have to economise, you have to sack, you have to reduce your public service, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to privatise this and privatise that, or else we won't lend you money. So guess what? Most of these little countries, with the honourable exception of Malaysia was sensible enough to resist this, but most of the countries fell for this, and of course nothing that a banker tells you that's going to help. So there's another book out now, and I saw it down Elizabeth Street. It's written by someone else, similar story, and the preface, which they call forward, the preface is written by the author of the book who wrote The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. So I'm asking anybody who's listening, sees it on YouTube, to think about trying to buy some of these things and writing a short letter to a politician and to the local paper and ask them what on earth is going on. Why are we being deceived about things like money, credit, debt? Nothing to do with the global financial breakdown is going to cause trouble to not just the big bugs sitting in big office towers or living in luxurious mansions. It could cause trouble to you and me. It could cause trouble to the ordinary working person, because some of them will lose their jobs perhaps. It could cause trouble to middle management and the senior executives. Some of them are losing their jobs and more possibly will. And it will cause trouble to investors, and it will cause trouble to retired people who have money invested in shares and all sorts of other funds which are not shares invested. And so we're talking about people from cradle to grave, because even when you get old, they're going to get at your money. Now, people might say this is the fault of the American subprime market, or they might say it's the fault of our governments or our big bugs wasting money. It's built into the system that these crashes occur every now and then. It's a cycle. But sensible governments and sensible people can avoid some of the crashes, some of the causes of the crash. In fact, it could be stopped altogether. But there are some ordinary things that ordinary people can do, and you just have to be amazed when you read some of these ads. This last 2 or 3 or 4 years, or maybe it's longer, correct me if I'm wrong, they've been advertising, do you own your own home? Turn your own home into cash. Why should you miss out on these holidays if you're retired? So they're asking older people who are retired or nearly retired to mortgage their home. They call it a fancy word. What's the word they call it? Nobody knows. Now that's just the silliness of ordinary people being sucked in by quick advertising. It's the same as ordinary people being sucked in by buy yourself a new bedroom suite, no money to pay for 3 years. It must be getting some people in, or they wouldn't keep advertising it. But that's obviously, if you buy something and don't have to pay anything for 3 years, you're going to have to pay a very high interest rate, aren't you? Right. So, getting back to the bigger bugs, that is politicians, bankers and so forth. Now, when the Democrats did have a whole lot of Democrats in the Senate, there was one called McLean. It was spelt McLean but pronounced McLean, I'm told. Street bookstore, where there's another book on the same sort of thing, the racketeers of the rich financiers, the global financiers, the dirty tricks they're playing. And the preface or foreword of this book has been written by the author of Confessions.
Yes, but I'm explaining.
I just spoke about. So I'm asking anybody here who's studying this or interested in this, to please send a short letter when you've studied enough, short letter to your politician, and a short letter to your newspaper, or an internet blog, telling them just 5 sentences on us. They're not going to read 50 pages. If they've got 5 sentences, if the politician is not interested or not convinced, it won't matter how much you write. If he's determined that that's not right, he's not going to listen. So save yourself a whole lot of energy, just write a short letter.
Yeah, we've heard it before. You say that every week.
So now that's all I can suggest to people. And as you know, I come here every 6 months. I attend a meeting of a forum group, tax reform people, called the Georgists, and they have very interesting theories. You're welcome to look them up. The group is called Prosper Australia, and they're in Hardware Lane. But as for me, I live in Perth. I'm a retired man, and now I'm a tired man, so I think I might bring the speech to an end. Any questions?
If you put a proposition Parliament here, he doesn't refuse it, that means he agrees.
The question is, if we put a proposition to a parliamentarian and doesn't refuse it, that means he agrees.
And he hasn't got the guts to write that.
If only that was true. That'd be a wonderful world if that was true. No, even if they do agree, often you'll find that it's just double talk and twisted balloon. So all you can do is keep on attempting to contact them occasionally, not too often, because what is a politician? He's just an ordinary person, he or she, ordinary person who's been elected to Parliament, but unfortunately they turned from being ordinary into being a politician. So